All right, everybody, it's about 12:01. We're getting ready to get started now. If everyone could try to be diligent about keeping yourselves on mute, that would be much appreciated. If at any time you have a question during this, just go ahead and type it into the chat box. Either one of us will get to it during the webinar, or we will bring it up at the Q&A after the conclusion of the webinar. We have a few special guests for us today, and I'm going to introduce the president of GDM, Tarek Khan, who will discuss our guests. Thanks, Tarek.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, whatever part of the world you're in. And I know we have been joined by people across the globe, although the majority has been from the US. And I wanted to thank my team, and especially Chris for introducing me, Rashmi Datta, Mei-Ling Zhao, and Kenya Barrios, who have worked diligently to make this webinar successful. I'm going to thank my speaker also when I get to that point. But most importantly, thanks to all of you for taking this time and being a part of this webinar. So today's webinar is a very interesting one. No matter whatever business you're in, somehow everyone has been impacted with the pandemic that we are experiencing around the globe. So our agenda today is some housekeeping items in the beginning about the webinar. Then I want to jump right into our discussion with the speakers. And then in the last 10, 15 minutes, we will dedicate towards the Q&A. I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to ask the questions. And throughout the webinar, you can go to the chat box. If you go at the bottom of your screen, you will see chat, and you can put down the questions. And we have our team who will be monitoring these questions. At some point in time, I would make sure that I get to as many questions as possible. So some housekeeping items, please make sure that whatever device that you're using, whether it's a laptop, iPad, or any other device, or your phone, make sure it's plugged in and you have enough juice to last for about an hour. And also, I never attend a webinar or a meeting where I cannot walk away with some key takeaways. So please take notes. I always make my goal to walk away with at least 3 key ideas that I'm going to go and implement in my business. You can connect with our speakers via LinkedIn also, and we'll try to put their LinkedIn URL so you can connect with them. Also use the chat box for any comments, questions that you have. And just to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded, we would share this recording with people who cannot make it, or even if you want to go back to the recording. And please don't forget to provide your feedback. At the end of this webinar, you will receive a short survey that may take less than 2 minutes. And it's very important for us to capture what we have done well and what we can improve going forward. So if you look at where we are today, you know, the speaker lines up that we have, they come from business professions and they have been very accomplished in their own career. So I want to thank Bill Shiloh, who's the president and CEO of Libra Insurance Partners, which is one of the largest marketing insurance groups with nearly 60 IMOs, and they're doing business in terms of sales in insurance side over 435 million, and on the annuity side 1.5 billion. We also have Kevin Brayton with us, who's executive vice president and responsible for all third-party and independent sales channel at Individual Life Insurance of Prudential, which is one of the largest insurance companies in the world. And then we have Mark Hug, who's not only a part of our organization, but a seasoned professional who has spent 40 years of his career in leading marketing and product development. He's an actuary, marketing and an actuary, which is a very rare combination. And I've had an opportunity to work with Mark on several projects. You know, he has been named one of the top CMOs when he was at Prudential. So he has a very impressive background. Before I go to my speakers, I want to make sure that we understand what is the purpose of this webinar. The purpose of this webinar is that anyone who's attending this webinar, you may be either your business is struggling, your business may be the same, or your business may be thriving. No matter whatever position or condition you are in, you can all walk away with 1 or 2 ideas that you can go back and put into your practice, and you'll see a difference. So these business leaders have done this over the years, and they have a very unique view on how to look at the current situation. Obviously, they come from the financial services background because many of our attendees are financial services professionals, but then we have many professionals who are outside the industry. So I think they're going to give ideas that can really help all of us. And towards the end, I have also invited Dustin Johnson, who comes from ORG, who is the chief marketing officer of that organization, to share some test case that how he has really delivered some impressive results at his organization, taking advantage of digital and social media. So very important thing for us, whatever state you're in, do understand that this pandemic was not brought by ourselves. This is a challenge that all of us are facing globally. And what happens to you is not in your control, but how you react to that is very much in our control. For most of our lives, we have always complained about, I wish I had more hours in a day. Now we do. People like us who live in New York, we spend about 3 hours in commuting. So we have 3 extra hours every working day. And wherever you live or work, you have some extra time. So what do we do with that time? So it's very important for us to be in a positive mindset versus negative mindset. We got to have an active lifestyle right now, because it's very easy to be lying in a bed and just spending 8 hours on the screen. Go out walking, jogging, running, whatever activities that you can get involved. It is very important. And networking versus not working. Never think that you are not working. You're always working. And today, with the access to social media, we have so many tools available to be connected with people. So my last slide before I go to my speakers, the question that you have to ask is about your business. How long can you survive if you don't get a major portion of the business that you have been getting in the past? How long is your runway? That's an important question that you have to ask. Who are the key stakeholders or players in your team, and how to engage them is a second question. Some companies will lose out on top talent during this pandemic. And it's very difficult. If you asked in my 30 years of career, what is the most difficult thing that I can share, is finding the right person and holding on to the right person. So it's very important that you identify who your key stakeholders, your business partners, or your team players are. Review your product and services that you're offering. Is there something new that you can offer? Is everything that you're offering is still related? Are people in demand for that? And then what do you need to do to stop investing? What expenses you should cut? Depending on where you are, is the real estate that you have, do you really need that much of real estate? You may or may not. You may need more or less. But you have to make a list of all the things that you have to start doing. And this doesn't only go for business, go for personal as well. And what do you need to start investing in? What is some new technology or new tools that you need that you may not have that would really help you understand the situation? So now let me jump to our speakers, and I would start with Bill Shiloh. Bill, who's the president and CEO of Libra Insurance, as I introduced earlier. And I recommend all of you to connect with these speakers via LinkedIn. They bring loads of experience, and I don't want to spend the entire hour in their background. But Bill, you are a seasoned professional who is managing an organization to provide services to thousands of financial advisors, and probably these advisors in turn reach out to millions of customers. You have been in the business for a long time, and you have seen many difficult situations. What is your view on the main impact this pandemic had caused to many businesses, especially you work with many mid-sized businesses? So what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, certainly, when we look at the life insurance business and the advisors that we work with and the producers that we work with, you saw an immediate halt to face-to-face meetings with clients, and from our perspective, face-to-face meetings with our advisors and our producers. So it changed the whole communication process, and so much of our business is based on relationships and on strength of relationships. And, communication becomes really, really critical. And that's what we've thrived on. And it's what the advisors thrive on with their clients. So when all the face-to-face meetings came to a screeching halt, we knew that was going to impact our business. We knew it had to impact our business. But I thought what was really interesting and really impressive was that this industry really showed its resilience. When we look at the business today, what we found is advisors very quickly pivoted and knew that maintaining relationships with clients was extremely important. So they utilized whatever communication tools that they could. And our BGA partners did the exact same thing. We immediately pivoted and started to increase our communication efforts with our advisors and the producers that we did business. And that communication actually resulted in application counts for life insurance that were extremely good. And so once everybody kind of hit their cadence with understanding, what the new business model had to look like. I mean, if you think about, when everything kind of changed on March 16th or whatever that date was, the big disruption in that everybody had to pivot to a different business model, to remote, to make sure that they could handle the processing. So that whole disruption, we had to deal with very quickly. And fortunately, many of the BGAs, they had business continuity plans in place, as did a lot of the advisors. So, that pivot happened pretty quickly. And then the focus really became on communication with customers, whether they were our customers, whether they were the advisor customers. We saw good activity. We were very fortunate in that we had some proprietary platforms for electronic processing of business, which helped both the producers and our organizations. And Tariq, when I look at this right now, when we look today, out of our 59 firms, 35 of our agencies are up in production over last year, which, if you would have asked me to predict what that number would have been on March 17th, I don't think I would have predicted that number, but it shows you just the power of commitment, to communication and understanding that communication, that's what strengthens relationships and which uncovers sales opportunities.
Thank you, Bill. And that's great leadership. 35 out of 59, that's more than 50%. And I know your business is very, handshake, face-to-face business. The advisors out there, they sell a very intangible product. So I think you hit it on the nail when you say that once the cadence hit, they really pivoted themselves and they adopted. So let me turn to Kevin now. And Kevin, when we were talking earlier, and you're running a very large organization into billions of dollars in revenue. If I understood correctly, you were saying that you are having a record year, despite, you're in a business which is also face-to-face. I know you're always on the plane visiting clients, meeting people, meeting different business firms. So what have you seen in the last 3 or 4 months, and what have you adapted yourself to really get out of the situation?
Yeah, thank you, Tariq. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and do this webinar with all of you. So yeah, we are experiencing a very good year. I think that the pandemic, in a positive way, has positively disrupted the way in which we have to do business and the way in which we have to engage our customers, work with our distribution partners, the value proposition that we deliver through the products, solutions, services that we bring to the marketplace, as well as including how that business gets done. So I would hit on a couple of points. First would be the way in which business is transacted. In the life insurance space, and particularly the way in which we've operated, it's been very difficult to transition to electronic platforms and digitize our business. So many of the places where we do business is still done on paper. So that becomes very challenging when you don't have necessarily the platforms that Bill spoke about to be able to transact the business, whether that's submitting the business, whether that's delivering policy, whether that's during the underwriting process and working with the medical facilities to be able to get exams and labs and medical paperwork for us to properly underwrite the clients and the consumers. So in the last 100 days, we have literally transitioned our entire business to becoming digitally enabled and being able to do business predominantly through digital platforms where we are requiring electronic use of submission platforms, interview platforms, delivery platforms, and so forth. I would say that that's a really big leap forward for us as a company, but also for our entire industry, where that we can move away from paper and move to more efficient manners in which we're transacting business. Number one, that protects the margin for our distribution partners. Number two, it allows the manufacturing partners to save money and put that money back into more value-added advisor or consumer or distributor-directed initiatives. And number three, it speeds up the whole transaction and the cycle time of acquiring life insurance. I would say the second thing that we've learned over the course of the last 120 days has been that while it's very much been our experience that this is a handshake business and it is a eyeball to eyeball business, we have reacted and adapted to a situation where we have relied upon very deep relationships, and we've learned very quickly that relationships matter. And when relationships matter, and when you have trusting, credible relationships with your partners, then it's not as fearful or it's not as terrifying in not being there eyeball to eyeball, because the trust is there, the credibility is there, the relationship is there. We've just got to learn new ways to connect with people, and we did that very quickly. So we're very fortunate in our business that we have very long-standing, very deep relationships. For example, with Libra Partners that Bill runs, we take advantage of that, and we put tools and technology in place for all of our salespeople to ensure that the communication is still there, and the communication and the modes of communication and the ways in which we communicate is still a direct pathway to our customers. And we accelerate that and we increase our mode of communications. It's just not face-to-face anymore. And we're finding success with that because of the relationship and the strength that that relationship has.
That's a great point, Kevin. And you're absolutely right that no matter whatever business you're in, learning how to develop relationships virtually has been very, very important. And I know that most of us have learned this. I learned this from my kids many, many years ago, as now they're growing up. Even if they were in next bedroom, they also always wanted to connect virtually. So I think that's very important. So Mark, I'm going to turn to you now, you being a marketing maven and a product guru. And there are many people who are from our insurance industry, financial services, but then there are many people who are not from the industry. And you have been the smartest of all, that you took an early retirement and enjoying the life at the lake. But how do you see this? And what's your view, and from your experience, what are some of the tips that you would like to advise our audience?
Well, I think, thank you, Tarek, and it's a pleasure being here. I can't echo more what Bill and Kevin said about communication and digitization. While the COVID virus is very tragic, the number of deaths unprecedented, at least in recent times, the disruption to the world economy is devastating. However, there's a yearning to get back to work. This is not like an economic driven recession like 2008 or 2001. there's a yearning to get back to work and a yearning to find new ways. And if you can do that without having to actually touch a person or go near a person, you're going to be successful. And I think everybody's trying to do that. So whether you have an agency or whether you're running a large corporation, I think the rule of the day is how do we digitize as fast as possible, and how do we communicate better? And frankly, my business associates that I talk to all over the country have all done that. They say by not commuting. I mean, I heard you say, Tarek, that you don't have to do the 3-hour commute, and by not commuting, you save hours a day. It makes you more productive. And if you happen to be someone who has to travel and see face-to-face people, like let's say a wholesaler or somebody like that, or an advisor, all of a sudden you're not doing that. You're just calling people. It's amazing how much more efficient you become, how many more people you can see in a day, how quickly things happen. And lo and behold, you have results like Bill or like Kevin said, where they're having some pretty good years. You have to get through some of the issues, but basically it all moves forward in a very nice fashion. So the silver lining behind this virus is, for our insurance industry at the very latest, is it has got us toward the digitization process much faster than we could have ever expected. And Kevin or Bill, you may want to comment on this, but how many of your advisors or BGAs were forced to stop doing paper? And I can tell you, from somebody who's been around for many, many decades, what a pain in the butt that has been to try to make that happen prior to this virus. Now they're forced to, and I guarantee you they're not going back to paper when this is finally over. They're going to stay that way. And no matter how many incentives we could have put in place, we never could have made it happen like this. So at least for the insurance industry, this digitization process, this more efficient communication process, I think is a blessing for us in the midst of a lot of tragedy that we've all suffered through this virus.
No,
there's no doubt that this has morphed the business models for BGAs and advisors as far as process is concerned. The digitization, the electronic applications, and and I commend a lot of the insurance companies have really beefed up their accelerated underwriting processes, raised the limits, allowed more business to come in through those processes. I mean, it's been a very collaborative approach. It's been a lot of patience across the board, and the result will be that the business model it will not go back to the way it was. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I would agree on both of those points. And I would also say it's really interesting because what we're particularly seeing as well is it has, while the pandemic, as Mark said, is very tragic, you mix that with, a terrible market environment and potential for recession. And people, consumers are now thinking about their finances and worried about, am I going to have enough money? Am I going to be able to protect my family? And am I going to die? And as tragic as that sounds, those are two good ingredients to get people to think about life insurance and the power of life insurance. So it has created, I believe, in amongst advisors and with consumers, a level of relevancy that and urgency that we have not seen in a very long time. And you couple that then with the digitization and the electronic capabilities that we've developed as an industry and now forced, it's just creating a much better experience for the consumers and the advisors to be able to provide this solution that we're offering. So I think those are.
I'm curious, Kevin,
positive
Bill, a lot of people think of this digitization, they think of term insurance. Are you seeing more term insurance and less perm insurance being sold, or can you share a little bit about what's happening there?
Yeah, so I think when the pandemic started, I think the immediate pivot to the electronic processing was term insurance, and so we saw early on in the pandemic, we saw an abundance of term insurance submissions. But when we're looking today, Carriers have expanded the accelerated underwriting system to accept permanent business. They've taken face amounts up. So we're starting to see a lot more. In fact, if I just to give Kevin kudos, when we look at our Prudential business, 32% of our business right now is in their new variable universal life product. So that gives you a feel for what has been the evolution of the business from a digital perspective. As we move forward there. So. A lot of that just the communication with the customers, but early on, certainly a predominance of our business was term insurance, but it has slowly changed.
So Bill, a question for you is, based on the discussion that we are having, I know a lot of your firms are very traditional business model, brick and mortar offices, large real estate, and, they love to play golf. Many of them are more mature in part of their life. So what was the biggest complaint that you were receiving from your BGAs, business leaders? What was the biggest problem they were facing when this pandemic hit?
So I think the biggest complaint, obviously you had the disruption to where everybody had to work remotely. You had to make sure that you had your kind of business continuity plan, your technology in place, your, the phone systems in place. And then, you had the leadership challenge, right? So now you had to develop the kind of the communication methods for working with not only your advisors and their producers, but also with your employees. So that became a challenge. And then, when you're measuring productivity, all of a sudden from a totally remote workforce, you got to kind of come up with some different metrics. How do we make sure things are on track? So, those were all challenges. I wouldn't call those complaints, but certainly a disruption and a challenge. I think that, the other thing that we found was that some of the reaction to the pandemic and, some of it from the insurance companies, some of it largely driven by reinsurance companies, was kind of the constriction of capacity. Underwriting rules changed, that if you were over 70 years old and you were rated table 2 or higher, you were going to be postponed. You couldn't get insurance, even if your client had nothing to do with the virus, so to speak. So, the amount of insurance you could get with the carrier became constricted. So, there were a lot of issues around. We were trying to get business in and do business, and found out that a certain percentage of our business maybe got postponed, or we didn't have enough capacity to do those types of things. So those were some of the reactions and ramifications that we ended up dealing with. And from a marketing organization perspective, we had to keep up with all these changes. I mean, every day there were changes coming out, on the underwriting side, on the processing side, on the capability side, and just monitoring that and communicating that so that, our partners could work with advisors in a very comprehensive and smooth process. That became a challenge for us.
Great. So Kevin, I know you have a very large organization which you lead, and knowing your work style, you are always meeting these people. You have a large office, and most of your team members are on the same floor, same building, and now you can't see any one of them. So how are you keeping, how are you retaining these top talent, and how do you decide, to engage them? What activities do you do, whether, it's BGAs with the producers or whether any business leader with their top employees? So, I'm not only talking about your direct reports, but I'm talking about your extended teams. So how do you make sure that they all stay engaged with you through this process?
That's a good question, and it's definitely different and challenging for sure. The majority of my workforce is already remote, so the majority of my internal colleagues and stuff that I deal with, we share office space together. So it's very different. So what I've learned is, in order to personally in order to stay connected, you have to be very disciplined about that. And I am very disciplined about maintaining my contacts, maintaining time on my calendar and carving out time on my calendar specifically to do outreach calls to people that I may not see or reach or have an opportunity to be on a Zoom or a WebEx meeting with for quite a while. You have to also do an inventory of your people. I've also found it pretty interesting that some of our people tend to be a little more introverted, and if you can understand, what drives that person and what drives their behavior and their characteristics, and you can understand then how to best connect with them. I've learned that some people are much better when I just drop a note to them and they appreciate the note and we engage in a conversation via email, whereas some people are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum that are very extroverted, and during this time they're very, very challenged about not being in front of their customers, not being in front of their team, not being in front of their colleagues and stuff like that. So you almost have to, really pay extra attention to that and do Zoom meetings with them and make sure that you are checking in on them on a regular basis. I would agree, or I would, build on Mark's point earlier, where when you don't have as much time interfering with your work hours, i.e., commuting time or dead time in the office, going from meeting to meeting, you can really truly be much more thoughtful about your day and much more deliberate about your interactions. And what I have found is the best time to do that for me is throughout the day, and just try and hit 10, 12, 15 people each day through just a reach out and how are you doing, or hey, I need your thoughts on something, could you come back to me on this? And sometimes that's done via video, sometimes that's done via email, sometimes that's done via phone call. But the baseline of it is make the time to do it, be disciplined about doing it, and try as best you can to understand who you are reaching out to and how they want to receive that message.
That's a great point. And I know, Mark, you had a head start among all of us. A few years ago, you adopted that practice, and you work from your lake house in Poconos, and, you're interacting with clients, managing teams, leading teams. I had an opportunity to work with you over these years. How do you manage that? And I know you get up very early in the morning, but do you have any tips for people? Because you have been managing and leading remotely for the last few years, and you came from a very traditional organization like Kevin is right now, having large, teams within one brick and mortar building. But now you have adapted that model. How is that working in leading remotely?
Well, it's working very nicely for me, and I'll tell you, over the last 4 years now, since I've left the office environment of Prudential, I've learned a few things. One is you have to know yourself. I'm an introvert. I know I may not act like it, but I am, which means the office provided me a way of getting in there and seeing people. It forced me, to see a number of people, and that was good for me. Well, being here at home, I really don't have to talk to anybody, and I'm fine. However, I know I have to talk to people, and I know I have to communicate and get my job done. So if you're an introvert and you find yourself maybe not reaching out like you're supposed to, you have to put that in your day and plan it in advance. On your calendar, put down each day who you're going to talk to, and make sure you talk to them and call them at that time, especially if you're an introvert. If you're an extrovert, it comes naturally. You're on the phone all the time. You love to suck energy out of people, and that's what you do as an extrovert. But as an introvert, you need to really plan that and actually be very, very forthright. So I've learned to do that. Also, I think this virus has caused us all to use, Zoom more, or WebEx, or Uber Conference, whatever your video of choice is. And I was lucky. I started that way early in my practice because I knew that was important, and it just turned out that this virus made it even more important. So if you happen to have a business or you're working from your house now, and if you haven't invested in such a video type conference structure because you expect everybody else to have it, I'll tell you, you should do it. Having that video conference is very much like the personal Skype of long ago. Even if it's a telephone call, but having that video conference available so you can show them papers, you can show them things that you have, is so much more important than just a plain phone call. So those are two things that I plan and invest in, and it's really helped me out in my practice here.
Got it. So Bill, I am very active on social media, and when I read out, as you know, the graduating class of 2020 feel really cheated. And the promise that we made them is not the promise that we delivered to them. Many of them lost jobs. And when I read out posts and memes from these young people, they're very disappointed. You have seen recession, a major market crash, crisis, and all that. What hope do you have for people who think that this is the end of the world, the sky is falling? What hope do you want to give them that, hey, we'll get back to it? This is a temporary problem. But some people are taking it as a permanent damage. So what advice do you have for people who are really very disappointed with their businesses right now?
Well, I think, and it's easy to see. I mean, this is the one crisis that has impacted everybody, and to a degree that most of us have never experienced. I mean, if we had the stock market crash of 08, 09, we didn't have to stay in our houses. We just dealt with it. And, we knew what the economic impact was going to be. So there's a certain amount of uncertainty that I think comes with this crisis. And, it continues to play out in the news, and there's not a whole lot of good news. So, I think a lot of it is, again, just listening to discussions and people like this, where we start to understand that, there's good activities going on, that there's business model shifts that are going to end up staying. There's positive things that are coming out of the communication. You heard Mark just talk about the communication process. One of the things that we find is everybody's accessible today. People aren't tied up in meetings. People aren't tied up on planes. So everybody's accessible. So there's a great opportunity for people to really take a step back and be proactive. And I think if you can be proactive, you could start to build relationships because people are accessible, this virus will ultimately die. And life will come back, and it will be what we would think would be back to normal. But you know what? That normal is going to be a little bit different. We're going to be able to take the positives out of what we've created right now and build that into what our future is going to be. So I think there's a lot of good things that are going to come out of it. But my point to all the folks that kind of get tied up in the consequences of the pandemic is to really think about being proactive, taking control of not only how you respond, but what you really do about that response. Make those choices that are going to result in building relationships and uncovering opportunities. Because there are opportunities out there, as some of our results, Kevin's results at Prudential, some of our partners, we're seeing increases in business because people are being proactive.
Right. No, that's a great point. So Kevin, as a business leader, you must be reviewing your strategy not only for 2020 but 21 and beyond. And just like every business leader, you must be thinking about that. Hey, after this pandemic, and once we get over with this post COVID-19, how do I want to build my organization? So how are you looking at the expense structure or resources? What is your recommendation to business leaders? What can they do when they look at this, that, what should be my next steps out of this to really ensure that I'm more sustainable?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that it could be, for our business, it's driven by what's happening in the financial markets, as well as what is being forced upon the businesses in terms of the pressure created by COVID. So a couple of different elements. I mentioned earlier that we've done a decent job of really reacting and adapting to the situation. Now is the time where we're starting to plan for the longer term and think about, where do we shift some of our investments? Do we shift some of our investments away from travel and entertainment and larger group meetings that we know are just not going to be part of how we do business, or as big of a part of how we do business going forward, at least for the next 18 months, at least until probably the end of 2021. So therefore, we're making decisions based on, travel and entertainment budgets and being at home more and investing in things like giving our people the tools and the technology and the resources that they need to be successful in this type of an environment, to be more successful in terms of virtual engagement. We are putting a lot of time, energy, and effort into coaching, training, and developing our employees and our staff on how to engage virtually, how to be more compelling and more convincing and more influential in a non-face-to-face type environment. So those are all skill sets that we believe will be very helpful and beneficial to us going forward. But we believe also very strongly that those are going to be complementary skill sets and additive to whatever the future holds. And when we do get back to the new normal, what that looks like is we know we've got exceptional skill sets in the face-to-face environment. Now we're just building our skill sets and adding this virtual component to it. I would also say that we are certainly looking at real estate, certainly as opportunities for do we need to be back in the office? I think that there is an argument and there is a desire to have office space. But I think that the future of that for us is going to look very, very different in terms of very few people, if any, will be back in the office full-time, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I think that will be a minority few people back in the office doing work in that manner. I do think that we will be putting limited staff back in the offices and doing it stacked on top of each other, like maybe doing every other day this week and 2 days next week, or 1 day a week for this month and things like that, to get the connections and get the face-to-face things done that we know we do really well. But I think we will absolutely be in a virtual environment, in a technology forward capacity, going forward forever.
And that's a great point. And, as a small business owner, we have been questioning, we have a penthouse in Manhattan, which is empty for the last 4 or 5 months. And why are we investing in that when no one is visiting us? So Mark, before I go back to, an example of an organization, let me ask you a last question before we go to the audience. I know you have been a champion of diversity throughout your career. And what we have seen in the US and globally, some of the things that, are noticeable, obviously with the tension that we have seen people of color felt somehow, in a different state of mind. We also realize that, everyone is at home. And when kids are home, moms have to work double. They have to be full-time mom and they have to be full-time professionals. And many times companies don't realize, and they demand the same engagement from their, women professionals as they do from male. And I'm not saying that there should be a compromise, but, how do we business leaders look at this diversity and understand that people may have different needs and diverse needs? And how do we really be sensitive to make sure that we have a full engagement from each and every one of our team members?
Yeah, this is a question that I'm often asked, Tarek, and maybe my answer is too simplistic, but I find that it works. So number one is flexibility. I think as leaders, and this virus, I think, has taught us more than ever how to be flexible, whether it be flexible because we have remote workers now, or flexible because of the digitization or the communication. That flexibility needs to extend to all diverse cultures that we have here in the US. And that flexibility means if you're a mom, you know what, you get a little more time, or you get a little different time, or if you're a stay-at-home dad, it's different if you're going to be working as well. So that flexibility is really critical. but I think it starts with who we want to hire. And very often, the hiring goes something like this. We talk to our friends who look just like us. We ask them if they have a candidate. They say yes. They give us a candidate who looks just like them. And we hire them based on a job description that we wrote that looks just like us. And so that's what that is. That's a formula for, a homogeneous structure, which in a way sounds great. Everybody looks like each other, but I'll tell you, it doesn't spawn new ideas. It doesn't spawn new ways of doing things. It doesn't spawn innovation, and it doesn't spawn creativity. So my suggestion is this. Number one, get rid of past job experience in your job descriptions. Forget that. Forget the 10 years of life insurance experience. Forget the 10 years of that. Forget the college education stuff. Those are relics of the past in my mind. You want the best person to do the job, period. And very often that person may or may not have the experience that you want. When you write your job descriptions that way, you get a much more diverse audience coming at you, number one. Number two is, with the remote culture coming to fruition here because of the virus, now's the time to reach across the entire United States for somebody in your office. So if you got an office in St. Louis, there's nothing wrong with hiring somebody out of Texas or hiring somebody out of Mississippi or wherever, as long as they can do the job, and they're going to be remote anyway. What do you care if they live 10 miles from you? And so reach out that way. And then finally, I would say, stop talking to your friends and asking them for advice on who to hire. Instead, reach out to strangers and ask them. And what do I mean by that? That means utilize some of the reputable firms that you have online to go out and reach for candidates who might serve your needs. If you do that, you're going to get a diverse set of candidates. And I think you're going to be happy over time with the people you get, the very high quality talent that's out there, and the diversity of ideas that you get.
That's a great point. And I think, you always quote that 76% of America consists of women, multicultural millennials. Yeah. So don't focus on 24%, and keep in mind that every third person in this country is either Hispanic, Black, or Asian. Every other person is a woman, and that's around the globe. And now millennials are the largest living generation. So I want to now go and turn to
the millennials, are so much more, or they're so much bigger than a third. I mean, the millennials are closer to 45 or 40%. Yes. You're going to get a diversity when you go after millennials. Plus, they will help you with your social media. Don't hire a 50-year-old to help you with your social media. Hire a 25 or 40 or a 35-year-old. They know a lot more than you do.
Yeah, you just fired all of us. Thank you. I just want to now quickly use a case study. Before I do that, the advice that our speakers have given, leading from a distance, employee engagement is very, very critical right now. Managing your people remotely and having a digital outreach, activities on social media. And I just want to give a quick, activity, cadence that. Just look at your LinkedIn profile. If your LinkedIn profile is 20 years old and no one is looking at it and no one is updating it, people are judging you how you look on your social media. LinkedIn is your office. It's very important that professionals update. Are you putting a blog every week? Are you putting some kind of a discussion? That's how you build your image of a subject matter expert. And if you cannot do that, outsource it to someone. Make sure that you do that. And as Mark was saying, that there are a lot of millennials who will be happy to make you look good, and they do it for a very affordable price. So it's very, very important that we become very active on our social media. That's how the engagement and hiring is going to come. I want to bring Dustin Johnson now, who is a partner. He has been working with us, his team. And the reason I invited Dustin is because due to courtesy of Prudential, they introduced us to ORG, which is a very large organization. They are a part of Bill Shiloh's organization as well. And ORG has done phenomenally well because they were not waiting for a pandemic, and they have gone digital. So all of those who are thinking about, what to do digitally, they worked with our company on a campaign where they reached out every 15 days email to recruiting. And they reached out to 317 million emails and with a 1 or 2% opening ratio, they have done phenomenally well. So please let me invite Dustin Johnson. And Dustin, I know we're cutting in, so in next 2 or 3 minutes, if you can talk about how you have been proactive and what activities that you have done to really leverage the opportunity. And you have started this well before pandemic, but I know throughout pandemic, I've been observing your e-blast and all your outreach campaigns. So tell us, what have you done that worked well in your firm?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Tarek, and happy to be here. Yeah, I mean, we really started to try to take a look at and focus on more of the diversity in our marketing back early in 2019. And diversity, I don't just mean the people that we were marketing to or trying to recruit, but the way that we market. In the past, we've done a lot of the traditional marketing that you see a lot of companies doing with email blasts, promoting sales concepts and doing that sort of thing. But in line with what Mark kind of hit on with hiring of employees, kind of goes the same way for us in recruiting the agents and advisors that work through us. We started to look and say, okay, well, if we're the ones developing the marketing and we're taking ideas from people who are a lot like us, that's who we're going to attract. What do we need to be doing to attract that new group of agents and advisors that are going to be coming in and taking place of the existing advisors that currently work with us and some of our other partners that are getting older in age and are probably going to be retiring soon? That's that millennial group, it's the women, and some other groups that are going to be coming in and being that force that pushes our industry forward. So we really wanted to take a look at, okay, how do we get in front of these folks and show them the value that One Resource Group can provide? We started early in 2019 by hiring somebody specifically for social media. We had a presence in the past, but we didn't highly rely on that. It was more of it wasn't really a concerted effort to push that. So we made that decision that we wanted to hire somebody specifically to do social media for us. Push us out on all the platforms, get the awareness out there. She's also here to do a lot more video content than we've ever done in the past. Very, very concise, short videos go a long way. We're seeing a lot of traction with that. Again, something that we had done in the past, but not enough of it. So we're glad that we did that. And then we brought on, we got introduced to you guys over at GDM. And working hand in hand with Alexis here in our office, who's doing the social media and the videos, gave her another viewpoint for the content and how to appeal to different agents and different advisors, what would attract them to One Resource Group. And then just building that back end. We've been a proponent of the accelerated underwriting, the e-applications, the drop tickets for a long time with our agents, just because we know the efficiencies that it creates for the agents and the ease of use, and a lot of times the client experience is that much better. So we really wanted to attract agents that would feel comfortable using those types of platforms. We spend a lot of time training our existing advisors who are used to paper, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth, as Kevin kind of mentioned, to get that agent that's been doing that for so many years to adopt the electronic process. Now it's kind of mandatory in a lot of cases, but we've been trying to do that for 4 or 5 years. But I think if we can recruit some more of those individuals that are more savvy on social media, that are used to using the computers, that grew up with technology, it's going to be, like a hand in glove when they get into the electronic platforms that we promote. And we'll have to do a lot less work on the training side and the adoption side to really help us grow our business. And we've seen a great success working with GDM. We've obviously got in front of a lot more people than we had in the past, and a greater diverse group than we have in the past. And it's gave us some great ideas, not only how to market and attract some of those folks, but how to operate our business as well.
Thank you, Dustin, and I truly appreciate it. It has been a pleasure working with your organization. And I think the reason that you stood out is, based on your activity, just imagine 317,818 emails sent to your audience, your producers. So even if you didn't hire 317,000, all of them know the brand very well. And some point in time, they're going to be engaged with you. So it's very, very important for us to understand that, how do you engage? So whatever business you're in, make sure that you have a plan to engage with your audience. And for those who are in the financial services like ORG is, This is a great opportunity for you to outreach, hire somebody within your organization, identify someone. If you don't have someone in your office, work with the firm. We can help you. You don't have to work with us. Find out someone else that can help you, but make sure you do these activities. Now we have last 5 minutes and I want to reach out to my speakers, and I wanted to get a 60-second reply from each one of them, helping, the audience that we have. Bill, I'm going to come first to you, that looking at the whole situation and the way forward, whatever has happened. But as a business leader who is really running such a large organization, what advice do you have, that what are some of the biggest opportunities that you see for businesses to grow in next 6 to 12 months?
Well, first of all, I think when you look at what has happened, the one thing that we've learned is that if you're running a business, you owe it to yourself to do some scenario planning. You owe it to yourself to do some what if type stuff, so that you're prepared for this type of stuff in the future. Run your financial models, do projections, understand where your resource levers are, and focus on talent retention. So those are all things with customer engagement that we've already talked about. Those are critical. So when you're really kind of, getting ready for what's next, those are things you've got to do. I think the one good thing for our business, and Kevin alluded to this, I think the relevance of life insurance in today's world has really increased. When you look in the past, you look at financial planning, in the top 10 financial planning concepts, life insurance has always been there, but it's been like 9 or 10. I think life insurance is going to move up into the top 5. I think it's going to stay there for a while. And I think it's going to be, when we look at 2021 and beyond, very, very bullish on the impact that life insurance is going to have, on people's lives, on our financial advisors, and those of us that are engaged in the industry. I think it's a great place to be. It's a great opportunity for us to really engage with our customers.
Thank you, Bill. So Kevin, in 60 seconds, what are some of the things that you're going to do or you're currently doing that would really make you more sustainable as a business organization in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. So I think it comes down to 2 things. Number one is accepting the pandemic and accepting the financial realities of today's world as actually a positive disruptor for our business. It has forced very positive things in our business. So the lesson learned there for us is let's not wait going forward for a financial crisis or a pandemic. Let's be open and let's be honest about where we are in our business cycle, and let's positively disrupt ourselves. So let's build the things that we need to do. Let's make the difficult decisions that we need to make. Let's move in the directions that we want to move, and maybe we've been too slow to move in. And let's do those things with the confidence that we know that we can execute, and we can find success in new ways that will spark new growth. So overall, positive disruption, and let's now take that and do that for ourselves going forward to spark new growth. The second component would be to continue to reach out to customers. In our business, in my business, customers are confused, customers are afraid, and customers are paralyzed. And they're all doing this in an environment where most of the time they are alone. So they're in their home and they're confused, they're paralyzed, and they're afraid. Reach out, be a resource, help them, and help them think about what they need to do, but most importantly, help them take action.
Thank you, Kevin. And Mark, we literally have, you're right on the clock. I know you're very focused on a strategy. So how would you recommend that business leaders review their strategy now?
Well, we all have more time on our hands. I think that's true. We can't let that go to waste. So with that extra time on your hand, you should do 2 things. Number one, spend a little more time on yourself, whether it's exercise, whether it's a great hobby, whether it's just the mental relaxation, you want to do that. But number two is use it to reevaluate your business model. Find out those expenses that you don't really need anymore, throw them out. Find out those new revenue generating areas, find out ways of new connections. Very often we were so busy when we were coming into the office every day, we never had time to think about our business strategy. Now is the time to do it. You got a lot of extra time on your hands. Take the time just to sit down and do it.
Thank you. I want to thank Bill Shiloh, Kevin Braden, Mark Hugg, Dustin Johnson, and all of you in the audience for being a part of this. And the last advice I have is get a coach and be a coach. It's very, very important time. There is always someone that you can learn from, and that person doesn't have to be older or better than you. It's someone who can really add value. I want to once again thank all of my speakers for taking their time. They're all busy business leaders. At the end, please send your feedback via survey that we're going to be sharing with you. And once again, I want to thank all of you for being part of this meeting. Thank you so much.